Mom's back is fine in it.
Wow,
That's great.
good.
See, I was still looking for the 7-passenger option.
That's a 7-passenger.
The Enclave is too? Wow.
Good.
Or maybe that's what she has now. I don't know, when she got pregnant, she got a new car.
Yeah, it's huge. And we were going down to Grand Rapids. And
Someone
my dad's
tell
got
her
a
that
lead-
here.
My dad's got a lead foot, but we were going 89. I'm like, Dad,
You might want to put this, yeah.
put your foot up. Get this a little bit.
You know, it's a nice smooth ride.
Yeah, and he's like, just telling my kids, his grandkids, couldn't keep it up. Just goes a little too fast.
That's what cruise is for, Dad.
Okay, everybody, it is 6:30. How about that? So we will call the regular meeting of East Bay Charter Township to order on Monday, October 11th at 6:30 PM. If you guys will join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll start with roll call, Ann.
Matt Corte.
Here.
Matt Cook.
Here.
Mindy Walters.
Present.
Tracy Bartlett.
Here.
Sue Corte.
Here.
Glenn Lyle.
Here.
And Beth Friend.
Here. Okay, and we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Tonight's meeting, we have the traditional consent calendar with the election equipment, raffle license, and a road name, and an appointment, or a couple appointments. And then under regular business, we have the Bottomland Conveyance from TC Water Sports, Special Assessment District public hearings for Peninsula Business Park 1, 2, and 3. Daryl Nelson is here for Grand Traverse County update. And then Wade Trim could not be here tonight, so if you have any specific questions on any projects, I can relay those to Brian for you. And Steve Kernovic, sorry, got it right the second time, Kernovic. Gosh, it's only taken me like 2 years to master that last name, you know. Right, I can do that one. I can, because I sent him emails, so. And that is the agenda. Does anybody have anything that, thing they want pulled or added with the agenda? Are we good to go?
Beth, I'm going to go ahead and have us pull the budget adjustments. We'll bring those back next month.
Okay, we can do that when we go to do the consent calendar. Sure, sounds good. All right, so hearing nothing else, we will move forward with our agendas presented. And is there any conflict of interest with anything that's on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move forward to public comment. It's the opportunity for anyone in the public to address the board on any topic. And we do have a specific time for public hearings for Business Park, but I don't think I see anyone here for that. So if there's anyone who would like to address the board, just, let us know. And it looks like that we're good. So we'll move on to correspondence and reports. You have some information about real ID information in your packet and the treasurer's August report. So you can review those. Also, with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. If Ann, you would like to go over that, and we'll just note that we'll pull those budget adjustments.
Sure. The purpose of the consent agenda is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one board motion without discussion. Any member of the board, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent agenda be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent agenda, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single board action adopting the consent calendar. This evening, you have the board minutes of September 13th, 2021. From the general fund, check numbers 16519 through 16589 in the amount of $91,264.55. The emergency fund, check numbers 4769 through 4795 in the amount of $56,535.60. From the receiving fund, check numbers 2824 through 2827, the amount of $68,178.59. The escrow fund, check numbers 1764 through 1766, in the amount of $850.50, and check number 1722 is previously approved. There were 2 payrolls, one dated August 29th, 2021 through September 11th, 2021, check number 7245 through 7249, totaled $50,915.70. And the payroll dated September 12th through September 25th, 2021, check number 7250 through 7257, totaled $52,205.35. Total payroll was $130,121.05, and total amount paid, $103,000, is that right? $950.29. And we're.
Can you
is that the
repeat
correct
both the
amount?
total payroll and the total amount paid?
Oh, it's the same thing, yeah, okay, so the total,
103, 121.05 is payroll.
yep, oh, there it
And
is.
319.
950.29. I copied it wrong. Okay, I was looking at.
You're human.
Proposed budget adjustments, we're taking those off, and other items, election equipment purchase for precinct number 5, raffle license, Northwest ORV Association, a new road name, Apple Hill, and appointments.
Okay, very good, thank you. Would anybody from the board like anything removed from the consent calendar? Okay, would anybody from a member of the public like anything removed from the consent calendar? Am I speaking too close to this? It sounds echoey to me, you guys. Is it okay?
That's fine.
Okay. All right, seeing none, is there a motion for the consent calendar?
Do we need to put resolution numbers?
What are we starting on?
Well, this one will be 28 because the lights are already numbered.
Okay. We can adjust the numbers if we want to, but that's fine. Are they,
I wouldn't because Tracy's already got them already done. I
Okay.
would start at 28.
And I
That's
don't
fine.
have to redo everything.
okay, that's fair enough. All right, so, let's see, so which ones do we have then for, under the consent agenda again?
So
What's the raffle license?
yeah, that would be 28.
28, okay. All right. So is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Sorry, I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the removal of the budget amendment.
Okay, is there support?
Support it.
Okay, motion by Bartlett, support by Walters. Roll call vote, Ann?
Bartlett.
Yes.
Walters.
Yes.
Lyle. S. Cortade.
Yes.
M. Cortade.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes. Okay, if you guys will grant me a little latitude, I didn't notice this, but just for being respectful of people's times, if you don't mind, if we were to move number 3 up before to number 1 and hear from Commissioner Nelson at the front side so that he can make good use of his time, although I'm sure he likes to hear us talk about Special Assessment District Business Park lights, but
My wife called you. She had a whole list of projects for me tonight, and I was disappointed when I told her what I was doing.
We don't have to move you.
It's on public record, so I would like to be able to get over it quickly.
she's probably watching the YouTube link, you know.
But she would be happy to know that I'm home. So it's like when we were a little kid, my mom called, so it's like my wife.
Well, thanks for being here, Daryl.
Yeah, thank you. I wore a Hawaiian shirt because it was a calm one, because it's so warm out, I thought, I go to a meeting, I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt when it's 80 degrees in the winter. So, thanks for having me. County Apportionment Commission has voted new districts. There's now going to be 9 commissioners as opposed to 7. The one that is probably going to be, it's a 2-step process because of confusion, but the one that was voted in last Thursday, I believe it was, will be voted on again.
The following
Probably
Thursday.
spring, yeah.
So not this week, there's a week between, and then it'll be next
2-week
week.
period. But I don't think there's any change expected. There's some,
Not unless the Secretary of State's office says there has to be, because that's why it's at that process right now.
so East Bay Township will still have 2 commissioners, and we'll yet to see who those are. So that change will be coming in the next election.
Is it split up differently or the same?
It is split up differently.
Okay.
She can probably provide you
Right.
a map.
Which precincts?
Well, we have added precinct number 5, which is right along Hammond Road, and the way, the map that was approved encompasses precinct 1, precinct 4, and precinct 5 in one district,
Okay.
and then precinct 2 and 3, and then all the way up into Acme is another district.
Yeah.
Kind of circles around it a little bit.
Yeah, the District 6 currently doesn't go all the way down to Fife Lake. Now District 6 will, and half of Acme comes into a district. It's actually a new district, which will be District 5, which will be Acme and kind of northeast Bay, roughly.
South, yeah. North, it'll be Acme and Southeast Bay,
No,
because that's precinct 2 and 3 and Acme.
okay. Isn't it right up along the water?
That one is precinct 1, 4, and 5,
Okay.
and part of Acme.
Trust her more than me.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's going to be confusing at first. I think all the maps were very interesting. I think that you guys said it best, where maybe not all of them are ideal, but it's the bigger picture we have to look at.
Yeah. Yeah, none of them were ideal, none of them were really bad. Interestingly enough, the map that was picked was not the GOP submission nor the Democratic Party submission. It was a submission of a citizen named Harold Lassers, who is a gentleman who comes to all the meetings and is very involved, a bright individual who has good things to say, and it was his map. So
Nice.
it shows how citizen input can make a difference. A citizen's map was selected overall. I don't know, there was bunches at one time, and they narrowed them down to 4. And at the meeting, they ended up voting on 3 because one was eliminated. So, yeah, I think that's kind of interesting that it was a citizen input map. Excuse me, there are staffing changes at the County Health Department that made the news. Dr. Collins' contract was not renewed. It was up, it had ended. The Board of Commission did not have any input on that decision. We voted unanimously to stand behind our administrator, but the Health Department director and the administration had made that decision, and the contract was not renewed. We did thank Dr. Collins in a resolution for his years of service to the county. We're going into our budgeting process, and the county looks really good financially. We're really pleased with that. We do expect to be adjusting some wage scales. As you guys have heard in the past, we have a wage compensation study that's being conducted throughout all of the staff, and no one is expecting us to find out that we're going to be lowering wages for anybody in this current market. So we might be adjusting some up, and that's part of the budgeting process. We're asking the heads to kind of incorporate that, do their own research, but we're getting some of that input. We're just getting some of that input now, but we'll have it for the final numbers, and to try to make those numbers right, because as you guys know, we're competing with the open market, and it is a tough market right now. So we've asked administration to explore the hiring of an outside firm to help organize public input and the federal reporting of the $18.6 million in American Rescue Plan funds. And that's going to be a large part of the focus in the next few months. I've been pushing, and a few others have been pushing really hard to start some preliminary discussions about what we do want to talk about, what we don't want to talk about. There's kind of 4 buckets right now. Of course, the first, really no counties in the state have really spent very much money for good reason, except for Shiawassee County came out several months ago, and they gave each of the county commissioners a $65,000 wage. As much as I like that idea, I think that's a bad idea. I think it was wrong, and ultimately Shiawassee County Commission removed that. Unfortunately, one of the buckets that you can easily do is wages. I don't think anyone in the county, though, is thinking that that's where we ought to go unless it was Health Department or something directly, which we have done some of that already. But what we do here is, we haven't got the money yet. It was supposed to come like in June, and it's still kind of trickling. I don't know if you guys have gotten your money. but don't spend it right away. Things are going to change. We don't know what's going to happen. And right now in Lansing, they have bulldozers pushing up piles of money in all different directions, trying to figure out what to do with it. I've been working with Representative Roth. I met with him today again, actually, on something, actually in East Bay Township on a stream issue. And they're looking for places to spend that money too. So we're wanting at the county to prioritize working with the different townships. So I'm looking for feedback from everybody here. And I've had some conversations with Ms. Friend early on, but what you guys think is important.
Yeah, I just want to commend you guys. I know I've heard from yourself and Commissioner Henschel, and also from administration on, I think the main thing that I heard come from those elected officials and staff are, how can we partner with local communities, local units of government, and make those dollars go further. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, we kind of like your wish list, what's important to you. There's going to be a public input component of this to find out what other people are thinking. Me personally, I'd like to see like maybe 3 to 5 bigger capstone projects. The things I've been talking about all along are, if we're, agree or not agree whether this money was a good idea, we're borrowing from our grandchildren. Let's do something. Let's spend it on our grandchildren. Let's do something now that 20 years from now we can all look back and be proud of what we did, not we threw it here, threw it there, shored up a budget, or did something temporary. I think that's a really bad idea. We're left with this responsibility. I think we need to do a really good job of it and be proud of what we did. And so that needs to be slow and methodical. And maybe if we do 5 things, maybe that one component is smaller projects. I've had conversation with the Mount Holiday fundraiser that's in this township that, they were asking about that. So I had a meeting, and I'm not ruling that out. Maybe we have a piece that's putting out the, things like that. So that's not a commitment, that's just me talking, so. But I'm hoping to get kind of a tabletop discussion going so that and we've got a work session, we're trying to pick a date, so that we can kind of throw out ideas and find out there might be a lot of commonality, or there might be something that some people are thinking and other people are totally against. So we'll start that process, and that'll be a public meeting, so you guys can see that, and we'll certainly report on that. But I invite any feedback from anybody from the public or from here, this board. So, and hopefully we'll be working together on some things down the road.
Sounds good.
Contracts have been signed with Workday to begin moving Grand Traverse County away from the 1970s Unix mainframe that uses AS400, which they don't even teach anymore, to a modern computer system. Allow for better web integration, making county services more accessible to our citizens. It's a huge project. It's going to take months to do. Over 5 years, it's going to cost about $4.5 million, but it's an important thing to get. We're looking at how it'll work better for township, for citizens, and even pulling reports. Right now, to pull a report, you've got to take handwrite numbers from different things, and you know how it is. You just don't pull reports. If you had a dashboard you can pull up and recreate, that's a good thing. So it's probably a long time coming, but I guess one criticism we had is that AS400 is not very hacked because it's old and the hackers don't even know how to use it.
They don't care anymore.
So we're going into something that's more up to be hacked. Well, we're not just leaving it open to the world, but that's a good criticism, I guess. Kind of like your typewriter doesn't get hacked either, I guess. And then a high note, at the last meeting, we took the next step in bonding of the pension and pavilion debt to save the taxpayers, $10, $12, maybe $15 million over the course of the next few years. So that's good. That didn't make the news, but I thought that was the highlight of the meeting. in
Good
my
stuff
book.
doesn't.
Right, not as exciting, but it's a good thing. So are there any questions for me?
Anything? No? Thank you very much for being here this evening. Appreciate
Feel free to
that.
reach out to me, and if you have any ideas, please let me know.
Sounds good, Daryl. Thank you.
I'll go report to supervisor at my house.
Okay. Sounds good. Hopefully she'll be as easy on you as we were. Okay. Okay, with that, we will move on to the Bottomland Conveyance. Claire, this is also has to do with the Planning Commission, so do you want to come up for this one as well? I know it's not directly related, but you're kind of looking at me like you were thinking you weren't going to be on the spot for that one. So with this is a request of TC Water Sports through Mansfield Land Use Consultants for a resolution approving an application for the conveyance of the Great Lakes Bottomland. If we approve it, it would be 29 for a resolution. You have in your packet the resolution, which just states that we hereby approve the application by the LLC to the state of Michigan. So if you'll recall, Eagle needs the approval of the local unit of government as they go through the process. So that's outlined in the materials in the Great Lakes Bottomland Conveyance Overview and also the application directions that are included. We've also got the illustration of the concept dock plan and the MCL that goes over that, and then the planning and zoning staff memo to the Planning Commission. So with that, I guess I would just ask for a quick comment from.
I wasn't there.
Okay. Ask for a quick comment from Claire regarding the land use adjacent to where they're, looking for the dock.
Sure, so the Planning Commission last Tuesday evening had site plan review and a public hearing for the applicants, both Jeff Bensley and Saburi Boyer. Were looking to put the water sports operation, jet ski, and boat rental at the former Irish Boat Shop, as well as 3 condos in the existing building, not changing the building footprint, having their offices located there. So it's 2 uses, both permitted by right in the Regional Business District. The Planning Commission held a public hearing. You'll see that's included in your packet. There's a staff memo along with some recommended conditions. So the Planning Commission basically, as a part of their site plan approval, they did approve the site plan last Tuesday. They approved it with all of the conditions that are listed, 1 through 7, including that possible condition that's noted about additional vegetation to help screen the parking lot. They also added some additional conditions. Those include requirement that there's no fires along the beach just because of the fueling and the gasoline associated with the boat rentals. Another condition was that they wanted to see the storage location on the site plan of the fueling station that's going to be parked in one of the parking spaces. And then also that Eagle or Army Corps permit would be required prior to any modification of the boat dock usage. So that was kind of what they approved the site plan with, so.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Do we have anyone here with us from, okay, great. If he wants to step up to the podium. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
I'm Jeff Bensley. Happy to be here.
Okay, very good. Is there anything you wanted to recap on this application at all?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. We are looking to do a combination of uses that Claire mentioned. One of them being boat rental, the other one being some resort condos. We're asking for your permission today to put a dock out in the water. Part of the process of this is going through the Army Corps of Engineers and EGLE, and they require township approval before you can start that process. So this is kind of our first step in a multi-step process. You've got a conceptual drawing of what the dock will look like. It is consistent with other docks in the Regional Business District as far as length and size and number of pieces of equipment. Ultimately, that'll be regulated by EGLE. If there's something that they feel should be altered or changed, they'll, have us do that.
Okay.
Other than that, yeah, we're excited. I think this is going to be a good use of the property. We're not changing the building. We're not changing the parking lot. We're just kind of repurposing what used to be the Irish Boat Shop. And then they currently have a dock permit. I guess that's important to say. You guys passed that in 2017-ish. And so we'll have their existing dock permit because it goes with the land until the until this new permit is passed. So their current permit is in generally the same location as this one. Obviously, their number of boats is different from ours because they were just sales. So they had, 3 or 4 boats on there.
Okay, oh, hold on, just one half a second. Okay, great. I do want to just mention, as noted on the cover sheet there, that what we are deciding on is the resolution for the application for the Bottomland Conveyance. I did want to give you that planning piece, though, just as background, so you know what was going on in the area. But our decision is specifically on that resolution for the Bottomland. Mindy, did you have a question?
Yes, and I'm not sure who the question is for, but
Okay.
the 2017 Bottomland Conveyance, what happens to it if you get this permit?
Gets nullified. It essentially replaces that one.
Okay, do we need to do anything on our resolution with regards to the nullification of the existing one at the same time?
I don't think technically we do need to, but we can absolutely include a different clause on there that, either as the whereas, we understand that. I would just throw in there a secondary clause that says, whereas the township board understands that the current Bottomland Conveyance granted would be replaced upon issuance of any forthcoming conveyance from this.
Can we use a different word than replaced? Something that makes it so that it's done, it doesn't transfer.
Terminates.
You can't terminate, there you
That
go.
it terminates upon a successful application that this is referring to.
I would expect Eagle would do it as well, but I think that that's good policy that we've got it in there too.
I think that's fine. As I said, Jeff mentioned, and I'm sure he's gone over this quite in detail with Eagle, so, yeah.
I just don't want 2 of them to be out there and there'd
Yep.
be question. I just want it clean.
Okay, all right.
Be the 2017 is repealed or terminated upon the acceptance.
Yep.
That our resolution is based on the understanding that it will be terminated with the issuance of a new Bottomland Conveyance.
I mean, seems reasonable to me. I just
Sure.
want to make sure that we have the old one until we get the new one type of
Yep.
thing, and that, one doesn't replace the other until that's been issued.
Yeah,
So,
we
but
have-
I totally get what you're saying,
Yeah.
is not having misinformation of why there's so many for a piece of property.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
want to,
And we don't have the authority to decide that, so this being in that resolution is just as, this is how we've made that decision. So I think that would be fine. Any other questions? Yeah, Glenn?
This dock is going to stick out in the bay 360 feet. Is that correct?
The maximum length that it would be able to be would be 360 feet. That being said, we want to put out the least amount that we can to still service our equipment. It's just the bottomlands right there is very shallow, and so every year the tides come in and out, or however you want to describe that on the Great Lakes. So there've been years where, maybe this dock is only 200 feet, but then there might be another year like 2015 where it was really shallow. I mean, if you remember driving along, the edge past Cherry Tree Inn, there was beach for days, as opposed to last year where the water was all the way up to the road almost.
Yeah,
So-
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, this gives us the ability to put it out at that length, but we have the discretion to use the number of sections necessary to it. And for us, we don't want to put out more than what we have to, I guess is what I would say, but it's hard to say based on the water depths every year.
Well, having said that, does that mean that these, and I guess, I don't know if you want to call them little docks that's adjoining the main dock, they would not be out there then? I'm just trying to look at the picture.
No, I just
get an
don't,
idea.
I don't really know your question, but the little docks adjoining the main dock would be.
Yeah, the ones,
It would like,
All here?
essentially, it'd all get, maybe, if it wasn't 360, let's say it was gonna be 300 next year, it would all just get kind of compressed down. So some of the middle sections towards the shore or in the middle part would be less. But this is what the maximum that it could be.
So in high water time, we had that, of course, you know real well, Jen's Park, how you guys had to adjust that dock length that time when you were looking at doing the kayak launch. So what you're saying then is the H, during times when the water's higher, would be closer into the shore, and then obviously further out, closer to maybe the 360, or at a maximum the 360 when the water's low.
Correct, yeah, it's hard to say exactly what it's gonna be, because even when the water appears to be low to us, there might be a sandbar that's like 100 feet offshore, and so when you're standing on the shore, you know, you really have to kind of walk that whole length of the dock to really realize, like, is it shallow enough or deep enough? But, you know, it's less work for us to put out less sections, so, you know, it's also less staff travel time, you know, and we all know we want to be more efficient, blah, 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 and so, you know, if we can have a shorter dock where they don't have to walk as far out there, then it saves us time, which saves us money, and so on.
Glenn, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, if I read this right, you're gonna have 14 jet skis, 11 boats, and 6 open for transit. Is that correct?
That would be, yeah, that would be like related to the hoist, but the 6 pieces that you're talking about are just like a buoy line that's marked off to the right. That's what we put our jet ski on when it comes back. So pretend that your family has a jet ski for an hour and you go out, and then your wife has to use the bathroom. You come back in, we don't put it back on the hoist, we just clip it on that line temporarily. And you go up, you know, use the facility or whatever, come back down. But again, that would be the maximum that we're asking for from Eagle. Doesn't mean that we have that much equipment or that we're gonna put that much out. That would be something they would govern as well.
Okay. I guess I got a question for planning, not so much for this gentleman. Was there any letters or anything sent out to the people at Tamarack, the owners of the units? And the reason I ask that, the last time we had a big dock, we had some owners next door that were pretty upset about it. And I just wondered if we contacted the people before we decided this.
Yeah, we did send it to all of the condo unit owners.
Okay, and nobody had any
We
issues?
didn't receive any
Okay.
comments.
That's a 300 feet, correct?
Yeah, and we were thinking about just sending it to, like, the association to distribute, but, which is, I think, legally what's required, but we did go ahead and send it to all of the owners that we have.
Okay.
I did have owners of Tamarack contact me about it.
You did?
I did, yeah.
I didn't, but, thank you.
I didn't have any, and I didn't have any mass emails. Do you know how many you had contact you?
I just had one person
Okay,
call me and say, what the heck are they doing?
okay. Very good, thank you. Any other questions?
So I've got a question. I'm the board member that sits on the ZBA. We've got a ZBA meeting. Sounds kind of similar to this. Is this the same TC Water Sports that's on the agenda for tomorrow?
So it is the same entity, but I just talked with Peter about this just late this afternoon. And one of the things that we have to remember is this property and this Bottomland Conveyance is a completely separate issue from any other parcel that this individual might be involved in elsewhere in the township.
Understood. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm trying to understand, since it is the same entity, is this operation conceivably going to be in addition to the current operation?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Sure, go ahead.
The permit is for this gentleman, not TC Water Sports?
Well, it's under the name that it is the East Bay Development Group LLC.
East Bay Development?
I am.
Okay. So are you also TC Water Sports?
I am.
Okay.
You'd mentioned that there was, maybe it was under the conditions list from Planning Commission about fuel storage. Was there supposed to be fuel storage, you said, in the parking lot out front? So that's just going to be in the updated site plan? Okay.
Yeah, that would be a condition upon land use, granting a land use permit would be the requirement requirement to document that location on the site plan.
Okay.
Which we will do, and we are gonna get the fire, whatever they asked us to do, the fire department's approval as well, for where it's located.
Okay.
Other questions?
Just clarify, are you doing the condos also, or just the water part?
Oh,
Oh, you're doing everything? Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Comments?
Just for clarification, because I feel like this is, like I said, for me, deja vu, been reviewing a lot of material for tomorrow and then this as well. What is this operation, I guess, what do we, from a zoning standpoint, what do we define this as? Is this defined as, is it a commercial boating operation? Is it a marina? I mean, I know this has kind of come up in the past, so I'm just looking for a little bit of guidance
Yeah,
here.
so the way that we're processing this application, Regional Business District allows combination of uses, so we're considering this a combination of both hotel, motel, as well as marina or similar uses. So we've got two different uses that are uses permitted by right. Regional Business District also allows the Planning Commission to designate uses that are similar, to allow uses that are similar to those permitted by right. So the Planning Commission considers this similar to a marina in terms of the intensity and land use and operations. So they've identified it. It's not necessarily a marina, but it's similar to a marina in terms of the intensity and the land use and operations.
So, typically, I guess, with different type of facilities and zoning, you have, whether it's, I don't know, a hotel or retail or whatever the case is, there's requirements for things like parking. How does the size of the operation, the expected size of the operation sort of correlate with some of those requirements? Because this isn't really something we see a whole lot of.
Yeah, so, we didn't have any parking standards in our zoning ordinance. We looked at other zoning ordinances to try to find, how they're regulating marinas for parking. Staff felt that this type of use would likely require more parking than what a marina would require, just because of marina, people aren't using their boat slips consistently. This would likely be more consistent. So I can't remember what the other use that we found in Elmwood and some of the other zoning ordinances, but what we used is one parking space per 2 jet skis and one parking space per 1 boat slip, plus 1 per employee on the largest shift. So the way that we process their proposal, in addition to their condo units and their office staffing the condo units, they'd be required 27 parking spaces. And right now, the existing venue has 48 parking spaces, so they have a bit of a surplus right now.
Okay. And then I did go back, kind of back to Glenn's question about the length of the dock here. I went back and just kind of real quick went through Google Earth and was checking, and it's similar in size to what some of the other docks existing are out there, the 360 feet.
I think you put the other docks in, didn't you?
some of them, not all of them.
But some of the other ones throughout the East Bay that I was looking at anyways, kind of to the point here, and you can see it delineated, I guess, on this site plan where that water's edge was. And I think actually you can go back to 2015 on Google Earth and see that there's, you know, a lot of marshland between the building and the actual water's edge. I guess, so where I'm going with that is what is the, all of the docks that are going to be out there, these are like temporary docks, right, that go out there for the summertime seasonal and they're pulled out, right, during the winter. Yeah. What is going to go between the building and across, going to span that marsh? Is that something more permanent, or do those temporary docks float on top of the marsh?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what you mean when you say marsh, but the temporary dock could go over, you know, we're expecting to start it or what we're talking about doing is starting it near the water's edge. Sometimes people put one section back on the land to start walking up or
Yeah.
whatever. So I'm not 100% sure what your question is, but there is sand like in between right now in between what would be the deck of the Waterfront Convention Center or the Irish Boat Shop, and then where the dock is.
There's all sand from, okay. Yeah, from what I was seeing, I guess from the 2015 where it was way out, it would look like a lot of grass and marsh, so like a lot of mud. I was just wondering if you were going to have people back and forth all the
We're hoping
time.
those water levels don't go that drastic. I mean, that was a real drastic year.
Yeah.
Just like last year was a real drastic high, so I think that, we hope that it isn't like that, If so, I think it was just that Tamarack, or whoever was in charge of this before Irish Boat Shop, they maybe didn't maintain it all that well, and so everyone knows how that looks. People
Sure. Well, I guess I'm just trying to imagine, you're saying that your access to the dock is going to start at the current water line and run out into the water however far it needs to accommodate the operation, but between the building and wherever that dock starts, depending on what the water level is of that current year, is just kind of whatever's there, marsh or mud or sand, and you said right now, but is that going to really accommodate moving, fuel caddies or equipment or whatever you need to get out there? Are you going to have something in between the building and that dock?
Those are good questions. If we did need something, we'd just lay down something temporary, whether it be, a temporary section of dock or a temporary boardwalk.
Okay. Is that something that would be included in like this future site plan approval?
We approved the site plan, the planning commission approved the site plan, and so that was not discussed as a part of the planning commission approval.
Yeah, I'm just imagining a scenario where there may be a gap here that it may be minor, but in the future, if this is approved and something needed to be added in the future, would that have to come back before someone to approve for any type of permitting?
Structure.
I think it would also depend on what side of the ordinary high water mark it is, because anything waterward of ordinary high water mark would be under jurisdiction of Eagle and Army Corps. Anything on East Bay side, if it's less than 100 square feet, then there's no regulations over it, but beyond that, if it was something larger than 100 square feet, it would be a structure and would require a land use permit and meet setbacks and stuff.
Okay.
And this bottomland conveyance, you can see in the description, it goes up to the ordinary high water mark.
Mm-hmm.
So that defines the southern border of the conveyance.
Yeah, I know I know there's a lot of just different jurisdictions that have different
Yeah,
approval authorities here, so.
sure. Sure, go ahead, Minnie. Were you done, Matt?
Yeah, I think so. I guess my last question, and this is just for my education, because I'm not in the water sports business, nor do I have a boat, maybe one day in the future, but
It sounded like a wish there.
maybe, yeah, I've got some other priorities right now. All of the temporary docks and storage equipment, whatever's associated with that's out there, what happens to it at the end of the season? Where does it go?
Just up on the beach.
Okay, so it's just stacked up on the beach, sits there over the winter, and then gets redeployed in the spring?
Correct.
Okay.
Mindy?
Question, though.
The depth of the water that needs to be there is 4 feet, correct?
I'm not sure what you're pointing at.
Anywhere for the dock, for the draw of the boat. So that's why you have to go out so far, is that you need 4 feet? Is that correct?
That's a tricky question, depending on the type of boat that we were launching from that spot, whether it's a deck boat or a pontoon or a tri-toon or a jet ski.
And you're not planning on bringing the parasail boat into this dock, correct?
I'm not sure what our long-term plan is. I mean, we could bring something here as far as a tour boat, but, that would be something we would talk about with Eagle. One would do this permit, but
Any other questions?
I just have
Are you done, Mindy, for now? Okay, Matt, go ahead.
I just heard the word marina thrown out there, and I realize it's not a marina. But these are all your boat slips, they're not like a marina where you can rent a boat slip. Okay, good.
In fact, at the planning commission, when we did the sketch plan review, it was asked if the people that rented the condos could bring their boat, and the answer was no.
Okay, good. No, I think it's a good accessory use to what you were planning on doing down there, so.
Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion? Again, it would be Resolution 29. I will take a stab at a motion, particularly since we have that added clause. So this would be Resolution 2021-29, resolution approving the application for conveyance of the Great Lakes Bottomlands. We would add a second whereas clause, replacing the therefore be it to and the second clause would say, whereas the Township Board understands the current approved Bottomland conveyance is terminated upon Eagle's issuance of the requested Bottomland conveyance, therefore be it, and the remaining document would stay the same. Is that everyone's understanding from the request? Okay. From that, I guess that's a motion. Is there support for that?
Support.
Okay, motion is made by Friend and supported by Cortade. It's a resolution, so we'll do a roll call vote. Ann?
Friend.
Yes.
M. Cortade.
Yes.
Lyle.
No.
Cook.
No.
Walters.
Yes.
Bartlett.
Yes.
S. Cortade.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll get a copy of that to you and also to Eagle, so,
thanks for your time.
absolutely.
Can I just ask that
Yeah.
the verbiage that you just spoke to, if you can just send it to Ann for the minutes?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
some of it, but.
Actually, you
You
can,
made it so pretty.
you can have my sheet, Ann. How about that? If the board will just give me a half a second here, I'll pull it out. I think you can probably figure out my shorthand.
Thank you. Glenn, can you hand that to Ann? Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to Special Assessment District public hearings. So this is for Business Park 1, 2, and 3, Phase 1, 2, and 3. We will start at 7:17, opening the public hearing for 93-2L Phase 1 Peninsula Business Park 1. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak regarding this special assessment? Okay, and real quick, while we will wait for everyone to rush to the podium, I'll go ahead and have you do a quick recap, Tracy.
So this year, we had a little bit of a change because they have replaced some of the streetlights in the business park with LED lights, which cost less to operate and come on a separate bill. So it's going to make accounts payable kind of fun, but, so I had to, figure out a cost for those broken down by light pole. So I did that. That's why this year, compared to other years, there are two different lighting sources. If you look on the analysis sheet, yes.
Who decides what lights are where?
Well, they were all put in as high-pressure sodium, and because I monitor them to see when they're on and off, when I called to get them fixed this last time, they put in LED.
Who's they?
This is
Electric company.
consumers, I think it is.
Yeah.
Lots of
Consumers
times they
Energy.
just tell us when they're going to.
Yeah. So, so I went out and I had to figure out how many LED and how many high-pressure sodium were in each district, and then figured out how much each one costs. I mean,
How do they bill the township? Is it based on a per fixture cost, or is it an electricity rate?
it's all of that.
Okay.
There's a per fixture, if you look at the bills, I don't know if I put them in the stuff that I gave you guys.
I don't think so.
It's probably just in my,
We just get a regular bill.
it's just like your bill at home. It has all the different charges that they give you, and there's so many lights that that bill covers.
Right.
Like, I think the LED, I don't remember. Let's see if I have it here. Well, you can see, I did give, did I give you guys this? No.
We didn't get one.
Oh, wait. Yeah.
I took, right now, there are 28 LED lights. It started out in, I think I have the wrong. It started out at 5 for the township. Now we have up to 28. So some of them are in the business park. Some of them are other places in the township that we pay for. So, and as they've increased the LED, the high-pressure sodium is decreased in the township as a whole. Like, we started out with 97 high-pressure sodium in the township a year ago, and now we have 74. So, it fluctuates. One goes up, one goes down. So that's why there are two different lighting costs for each district. So you'll notice that District Phase 2, they only had one LED light. So their cost actually went up because the high-pressure sodium cost went up. So that's why they're the only ones with an increase.
Thanks, Trace.
Quick question.
Yep.
How much if you've got it, what is high-pressure sodium and an LED, the difference in price on operation?
Let me see if I have it with me.
Isn't it 1907
this?
minus 790?
No, I don't.
Yes,
Okay,
actually, yes. Because
no difference?
yes, sorry, it is right there. Glenn, it's right on that analysis sheet.
We didn't get one.
Yeah, you did.
I
Yes, you
did.
This you
It's
did.
in the packet.
It's the second. It says it's page 74 of 95.
Okay, but this is it here?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can give you mine because I've got it. Here.
Thank you. Here, Glenn.
Thank you.
Okay, so with 93-2L, let the record show that, we closed the public hearing at like 7.
It opened and closed at 7:17 without comment.
Yep, exactly. And this would be resolution 2127. Nope, sorry, I have the wrong one.
25.
Thank you. 25.
I have one quick question about this. Sorry. Does this, it seems like a pretty minimal amount of streetlights to have to reassess rates for. Do y'all have to do this every year?
Every year,
For just these 3 districts?
yep.
Is there,
They're the only streetlights in the district that we don't pay for.
It's an
Okay.
annual assessment, so you have to
Yeah,
do it
goes on
every
their
year.
winter tax bill.
gotcha, there's,
We don't have to do it for all the streetlights. A lot of the streetlights you'll see in the budget, a payment, it's about $20,000 a year.
Sure, okay.
It's for the ones that aren't attached to a special assessment.
yeah, okay. Well, I was just looking at some of the other administrative costs to going through this activity each year. Seems like it kind of negates some of the savings associated with some of the LED
Yeah.
lighting, but
Take it up with Public Act 188 of
Okay.
1954.
yeah, it'd be nice, I guess there was a way to roll
Streamline
this
it?
out for a few years at a time or something.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. So this is Resolution 2021-25. Is there a motion to accept that resolution?
Support.
Thank you. We will just note that that's $144 per lot, and we'll do a roll call vote.
Lyle,
Yes.
S. Cortade,
Yes.
M. Cortade,
Yes.
Walters,
I will say yes, as long as we put it on the current letterhead.
Oh, did we have the old one?
The resolution is on that one?
Only this one.
Oh, yeah, just this one.
I was gonna say, I have the current one.
25, and I have Lyle, Walters, Cortade, and Cook.
Look at this one, Tracy.
Oh, maybe I changed it. Maybe I realized it and changed it to my, I'm sorry. I will make sure it's on the right letterhead.
Then I say yes.
Okay,
Sorry
where was
about
I?
that.
What is the number?
25.
2021-25.
2021, 25.
I think I was at Cook,
I said yeah.
Walter said yes, so Cook would be next.
yeah.
Yes.
Cook, Bartlett,
Yes.
and Friend.
Yes.
Sorry, messed you up.
That's okay.
So we'll open the public hearing at 7:25 for 95-2L Phase 2 Peninsula Business Park. Is there anybody who would like to make comment on this during the public hearing? There is none, so we will close the public hearing and entertain a motion for 2021-26.
Support.
Okay, motion by Lyle, support by M. Cortade, and we'll do a roll call vote.
Lyle,
Yes.
M. Cortade.
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Walters,
Yes.
S. Cortade.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes. Lyle, you got a football game to go to or something? Okay, so we'll open the public hearing
Oh,
for,
gotta eat supper.
Linda still feeds you, 1-1L Phase 3 Peninsula Business Park 3. We'll open the public hearing at 7:26 and see if there's any public comment that would like to address the board for the special assessment district. And seeing none, we will close the public hearing at 7:26 and entertain a motion for
So moved.
2021-27. And who's it supported by?
Support.
Okay, motion is made by Lyle and supported by Walters, and we'll do a roll call vote.
Lyle,
Yeah.
Walters,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
M. Cortade.
Yes.
S. Cortade,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Friend.
Yes. Okay, very good, thank you. And with that, as I mentioned, Brian couldn't be here tonight, but, oh gosh, just a couple of things he probably would have mentioned is one, they've wrapped up and had the final, they've had the substantial completion for the roundabout, and water and sewer is all good to go, and underneath all of that infrastructure. He's also working on, obviously, things through planning and zoning for some developments, and then he is also working on the Arbutus Lake Number 5, the engineering, because it was a conceptual plan that the grant was awarded for, so now they're working on that engineering and the permitting for that. So if you have any questions for him, just let me know, and I will get those to him. With that, we have Steve Kernovic here. Steve, of course, is our accountant from Manor Costerison, and he's going to just go over our third quarter of the year. Yeah.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
About the roundabout?
Yeah.
There haven't been any accidents yet?
I think there has been one accident. I don't know if there's been any more than one. And I do know that there was a lady who was going the wrong way in it. She was going.
I was behind one that
I was,
decided to do that.
no, because she was in front of me, and I was like,
I watched somebody go up and over all of the, I'm like, what in the heck?
I watched an Apple truck go up around and go into the middle of the roundabout to get through.
but I will say though, even though, I mean, there's gonna be learning curves like that, but as the road commission and the roads have stated, there's a reason that they do those as far as the loss of life versus property damage and all of that. And driving it every day, like 4 times a day minimum, it's pretty handy to go through. You're never waiting behind cars or a light, so not bad.
The only drawback, and when you do it all the time, it's not a problem, but I've just about got wiped out up there, where somebody is in the inside lane as they go around, headed toward 4 Mile,
Yeah.
and before they turn to the right in front of you.
I
But,
see that a lot.
yeah,
So.
but anyhow.
It's the 2 lanes
That's
there.
the 2 lanes going east, yeah. It's a little funky that way, but it is the darn prettiest roundabout. I will say we've had a lot of positive comments on like the placemaking, which is the reason Claire and I met with the road commission in the very first place, is so that we didn't have a concrete foreign object settled down in the middle of our township for forever. And instead we have something that's some nice placemaking for a pretty reasonable cost. So we've gotten a lot of positive comments on that from residents, and I've seen it randomly on social media too. So anyway, so with that, Steve, how are you doing tonight?
Good, good. I think I almost caused an accident in that this morning. But,
Did you?
That was you?
Felt like a little Indy car going through there. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty sharp.
Are you just gonna talk round about this budget, or?
Yeah. Well, in my second hour of my presentation tonight. No, we'll make it very short and sweet, because I know Beth's got information as far as the overall budget tonight, so I won't take a lot of your time, but just a real brief summary of what we've been working on this quarter. The normal monthly bank reconciliations and so forth was kind of the focus this quarter. Did some Metro tax analysis also this quarter, and kind of proving out the funds and so forth that were expended and distributed to Metro. Finishing up the F-65, getting and having that submitted by the township. And I know as your county commissioner spoke, the ARPA calculation. So we calculated or did your ARPA lost revenue calculation and provided that to Beth. That's kind of your basis, as also as he had mentioned, kind of those those 4 buckets that start the concept of ARPA and how you're going to spend those dollars. And so that one kind of and we've done probably, I think, close to 30 probably lost revenue calculations, and so similar to what your commissioner was saying, and that's kind of those 4 buckets are what we look at as you. One of those buckets is the lost revenue calculation. That's kind of the most flexible bucket, and kind of the safety net is what I've been telling people is you've got infrastructure, broadband, water, sewer infrastructure, the premium pay for essential workers, so by definition of the act, so maybe not commissioners as he had mentioned, and then in direct response to the pandemic, so masks and whatever it may be, anything to help with social distancing and so forth, and then kind of that lost revenue bucket. So we've got that component ready for you when you get your dollars and when you do make your determinations and decisions of how you're going to expend those dollars.
I just wanted to add, Steve, that I'm really glad when Steve did that. They tell you, you could do the calculation. It's great to have a professional do it because you don't think you have lost revenue, because really our revenue stream was decent going through COVID, but you do by the basis of how they determine it, and it's much larger than what you anticipate when you just hear lost revenue. It's a different calculation, and I think it was several $100,000 for our township. So.
Yeah, it kind of goes back from 16, 17, 18. 19 was your base, and it backs up to 16, 17, 18, and then compares that. They call it a counterfactual. Basically, it's like a projection or a forecast out there to say, how does that compare to your actual for 2020, and then that difference ends up being the lost revenue for 2020, and then it can be done again in 21, 22, 23, technically 24, but we won't have 24's numbers until 25. So I think that year probably is not going to be part of it. But I don't recall. I mean, like I said, your number was larger, and
my number was lower when you mean the townships? Yeah, when I did just like a thumbnail sketch to look at it, I actually used the lower percentage because I didn't do the calculation of the higher, and our percentage was higher than the 4%.
Yeah, 4.1, yeah. And that's, and of the 30-ish that we've done, I think I've had 3 that have not had lost revenue. I mean, the rest, so a vast majority of the analysis that you do, you sit here and you think, oh gosh, it's, we did pretty, we fared, whatever. It's pretty common. I mean, it's uncommon to not have lost revenue. I mean, so it's with the, like I said, of the 30-ish that we've done, we've had 2 or 3, 4 maybe at the most that haven't had any lost revenue based on calculations. So So yeah, so that's at least kind of your base, so that'll be a good place to start, as you start looking forward to, expending those dollars. So I think I got to everybody's spot. Should be a landscaped page. I got an extra one if I missed somebody, but I think I got one to everybody's spot. And like I said, I'll go, real high level, just because I know we've got some budgetary stuff on your agenda yet too, and overall, I mean, things look pretty consistent. So looking at that, I think you've got a 7-page document there. I think it might say 1 of 25, but there's only 7 pages attached there. And like I said, I'll just kind of touch on totals. Use total revenues as you look there on the first page. Almost halfway down the page, total revenues compared to budget, you're at 67%. So 67%, kind of our benchmark would be 75, obviously, through 3 quarters. But really, just 4 that I'll point you to on here is that very top line. Kind of a mixture of things get you to that 67%. That top line, virtually all your tax revenue obviously has come in and been collected and so forth. So you're at 99, almost 99.5%. So tax revenue right in line. Continuing on down, state revenue sharing, about halfway down the revenues, you're at 58% there. That's paid every other month, so you've only gotten a little over half of that money. I think it's a little heavier in the first. That 541,000 that's come in, that's, like I said, 58%. Projecting about 511,000 for the next 3 months, or next 3 payments that'll come in. One of them comes in February, but gets recorded back into this fiscal year. So that'll kind of shake out. You may be a little bit higher actual than budget, probably when that comes in, which is a good thing, to have more revenue than budgeted. The septage advance payment, a couple lines down from there, is 0 right now. That usually comes in. Last year it came in October, so that'll come in. So that's a 0 right now, but will increase. And then cable franchise, the very next line, there you're at 46%. A large chunk of that comes in. About half of it comes in November and December. In fact, sometimes it even comes in January again that we record back. So revenues are pretty consistent with the past and pretty close to to being on budget. I won't go through a lot of the details. Actually, if you go to the very last page of what you had, I'll kind of just touch on some totals, and if you want to go back up into the details, we can. But your last page there, page 7, second line from the bottom, total expenditures. And so as you can see there, in the year-to-date column, so that second column, total expenditures for the general fund, $1,153,000. So in total, that's about 61% of budget. And some of the areas that are under budget, that are kind of pushing that 61% down compared to kind of, again, our benchmark at 75. There was about 6 areas that were some of the larger budgets. Actual was under budget, and again, we won't go through. They're all in those first 6 pages that you have there in front of you, but a few of them go over to page 2. Is the supervisor is under budget, about 26,000, and just a variety, as you can see there. They supervisor activity starts on page 1 and flows into page 2, so that's about 26,000 under budget. Elections, none so far, and so that's a $33,000 under budget there for elections. Assessors, continuing on down page 2. Assessor is about 100,000 under budget, so they bill after the quarter end, so your third quarter is not in there yet. So as you can see, you're at about 50% of your budget because the July, August, September quarter is not in there yet, because you're being paid that in October. So that's about 100,000 under budget. Continuing on down is Township Hall. Township Hall is about 87,000 under budget, and mainly there. you had budgeted for the receptionist position, and that individual has retired, hasn't been replaced yet, so that's an area of under budget. And then also capital outlay in that function of Township Hall. Majority of that has not been incurred yet, so it's about 25,000 under budget for capital outlay related items for the Township Hall. Two other areas of under budget is the Parks Commission area. Parks Commission is under budget, and again, if you want to look at the details, it's on page 5. But Parks Commission is about 60,000 under budget, mainly that attorney/engineer costs are under. About 51,000 of the 60 were just in that line item. So.
And just to interject, that is the Arbutus Lake number 5, the engineering that they're doing. That was the contract for about 55,000, I think, and only a portion of that will be this year.
So that's in there, so that's under budget, about 60. And then starting at the bottom of 5 and carrying over to page 6 is the buildings and grounds area. And buildings and grounds, again, it's about 61,000 under budget. Majority of that is that very bottom line there, that capital outlay line, no incurrence yet of that. Also contracted services there on page 6, the very top line on page 6, the contracted services, about 9,000 under budget. So those are the two bigger areas. So if you kind of look at those underages and factor those out, everything else is about 60 or 76%. So again, right within that wheelhouse. I usually look at within 5% of budget and so forth. So 75% is the benchmark, and the rest of the functions within the general fund are at 76%. So again, pretty good shape there as far as the overall expenditures. And the rest of the funds, I didn't give you those details because they're, again, pretty consistent with going forward, looking at, kind of your metro was pretty much right on track. The ambulance was right on track within 5% or so of that 75% benchmark. The other funds, like the water, sewer, those are a little harder to look at, so it's always more difficult to explain because it includes expenses as you disperse dollars, but at the end of the year it includes depreciation expense and all those kind of things. So it's on that what we call the full accrual basis of accounting, like a business. So it's always difficult to you look at it and you say, well, gosh, we've expended all this money, but usually that gets capitalized and then depreciated over the life of the asset. So it's kind of hard to look at it throughout the year, and we could say, wow, we're at 120%. Well, that's because you expended dollars that will capitalize and depreciate. So rather than probably already confused you just with that accounting nerd speech there that I just did, but rather than go through a lot of that, it kind of trues itself up at the end of the year when we do audit prep and that type of thing for audits. So I know that's a lot of information, but I know you had. I didn't want to go into too much of a deep dive.
I appreciate that.
I know you got some budget.
Yeah.
Stuff that you want to go through.
Does anyone have any questions right now for Steve related to where we're at in the third quarter? Or we'll just kind of move over to an overview of taking the first glance at the budget real quick, okay? So Steve, if you could just stick with us here in case anyone has a question on how we might account for something accounting-wise, any projects or anything like that. So this is the first blush at the 2022 budget. What you'll have what is in this draft packet is similar very much to what we had, is exactly similar to what we had last year. As a matter of fact, I replaced a lot of 2020s with 2021s and 2021s with 2022s. So if you see any of those that aren't quite right, it's kind of like, where's Waldo? Find the right date. I think I got them all, but anyway, so this is the General Appropriations Act. That is the resolution that we are required to pass with that. You'll notice that the revenues and expenditures are not in there right now. We'll go over some of that detail. I'm going to include those when we get some of the final numbers and some of those smaller funds. So, but that gives you an idea of the detail that's in the General Appropriations Act. So for example, last year, I think was something new that we added, was that we could, before, you couldn't make any transfer on any personnel or capital outlays. And that kind of hit us with going into the audit in the last month of the year. So we had put in Section 8 that there could not be any transfer over that amount. We could under that, and none of it could be used to adjust any wages. So that just allows us to make sure that we're fine going into the audit. And so that you can read that detail in the General Appropriations Act. As I mentioned, that is the same that we had last year. We haven't changed any of the terms in that. On page 7, that's just the attachment, you'll see attachment A and attachment B. It just goes in the detail. It spells out each fund, and as you can see, the ones that we'll get to fill in are those smaller funds. And then attachment B breaks those down a little bit more into departments specifically for that Fund 101. The next several pages are what you're very familiar in seeing, is the resolutions for the supervisor, clerk, treasurer, and trustees that we need to do for the compensation. And so those have been, all compensation has been met at 3% other than where it's noted, and we'll go through that where it is noted. It's interesting that if you look at some of the COLA numbers, if you're looking at earlier this year, it could be like about 1.6%. And then if you look at Social Security, what they're going to be doing, they're anticipating in January of '22, it's at 6%. So there's quite a swing this past year in some of the COLA. I did go ahead and keep that at the anticipated 3%. To my knowledge, this board has always done, since I've been here, I think we've done 3%. Some years we've done 1 to 2%.
The policy that we passed when we went multiple years at 0, would that we would follow COLA and our, gosh, I just lost the name of the other one. The cost of living, the COLA, or 3%, whichever was, 3% would be the bottom. But if COLA was higher, then we would go higher.
Sure. So, so what I've known that the percentage that has been utilized in the years that I recall, and you guys can tell me if it's different from what you remember, but I remember typically at a 3%. When it has been a little bit lower, we've done 1 to 2%, and there were some years, I think there, probably in that 2008 to 2011 timeframe where there was probably a 0%.
We did 3 years at 0.
Very, very similar. Typically, we do the same thing at Metro. I think we've always been within like a % of Metro, if not the exact same. So for right now, and that can be, obviously a point of discussion, but I've left it at 3% with such a great swing, and we can alter that as needed. But that's what's included in the budget. As you remember, at the ambulance, we did 5%. That was 3% COLA and a 2% wage and performance adjustment. So that was specifically kind of an industry adjustment with the emergency medical services. So let's see, we'll go through, starting on page 17, I'll just take you through a brief overview. As I said, I know that you've received the budget and haven't had time to delve into some of the details of it, but let me give you a brief overview, similar to what Steve did, that starts on page 17. So this is the general fund, which is most of the funds that we deal with on a daily basis. You'll see the estimated revenues. We're looking at about $2.1 million in 2022. This does not right now factor in any ARPA funds in any of the budgets quite yet. We will be getting it, but there's a lot of ambiguity as far as timing and how we'll account for it and so forth. So I haven't factored that in here right now. We can always adjust that. So at 2.1 million, you'll notice that one of the things you'll notice is about the seventh line down there, underneath the state revenue sharing, you'll see a $325,000 revenue, and that is the grant award from the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund that's for the Arbutus Lake number 5, and that's for $300,000. And all of us have been talking about that now for quite some time. It's been awarded now for almost since last December. And of course, we've been planning for it for a long time before that, preparing for that grant cycle. And then the $25,000 is Mount Holiday usually does a 2% tribal grant that they're pretty successful in getting. So we factor that in, and that's just a direct in revenues and out in expenditures when in the Parks Commission. So in looking at the revenues, a couple things to notice, and you'll notice in the notes that follow this in the blue detail after our notes for any particular line items. Oftentimes I've included what either impacts them. So for example, mobile home tax, just to let you know that that's Wood Creek, Timber Ridge, but yet doesn't include Alta Vista yet. So that may change. So for example, current property taxes, the way that we've always done it is we take the ad valorem from the equalization report, multiply the millage request that we've just done in September here. And then I also take a look at over past years where we're at between the budgeted amount and what we actually bring in, because there's usually a little bit of a difference there. And so I take that percentage and I apply it as well. So we're typically pretty darn close on the revenues for the current property taxes. The state gives us those numbers in advance. They're always an estimate. This year, as you can see from our projected activity of about $1,050,000, we're looking at next year, which you'd love to see a slight increase. It's actually showing a bit of a decrease of about $30,000, and that's just based on their projected revenues that they give through the state. You have to kind of divide it up a little bit because their fiscal year is different than ours, but typically when they're projecting those, the further out they project, those latter couple payments will fluctuate a little bit. So that is, the other thing is cable franchise fees. While we did negotiate with other townships, a pretty successful franchise agreement about, 2 years ago, I think. We did it in conjunction with Garfield and Traverse City and Elmwood. And we got some favorable terms there, definitely, but as you know, cable, everyone, it's based on user and revenues, and so as people are watching Hulu and I don't know, whatever else, there's YouTube and everything else, that can start to impact it. And as a matter of fact, I'm looking at will probably be about 9,000 down from last year, and so I've anticipated just a slight downturn from next year. And we do keep a watch on these revenues pretty closely and look and adjust as needed. So that kind of sums up the revenues for you. We're looking at 1.8 million. We work on the projected activity for 2021 as much as the 2022 request at this time of the year. So you'll notice that we're looking at about 1.8 million. And next year, really the only difference is that the grant funding, that 300,000 between them. So moving on, you'll skip a couple pages there. And we'll move on to the Township Board. This is pretty standard for the Township Board Department. So on all of these things, this is going to start to look very different over the next several months as we implement the new chart of accounts. So we've all been working on that hard, from the clerk's department, the accountant, myself, Tracy, in kind of how we can adjust some of these things to look and what things will be grouped together. Of course, everything has to pass through the chart of accounts detail and make sure that it adheres to what the state is requesting. But At any rate, with the township board, you will see just standard, meeting fees are adjusted at that 3%, as I mentioned. I take things like recording secretary, and I'll look back through the bills and see on average how many meetings we've had. So for the last 2 years, it's been an average of 17 meetings. And then I'll take what the average cost is. I'll usually add a factor to that, and that's where we come up with the requested budgeted amount. We have moved, most of the legal expense used to get coded into township board, and we're coding that into different places now, so that's why you'll see that decrease a little bit, and we're really recording it more to the department that is using it, whether that's planning and zoning or assessing with MTTs or that sort of thing. Our audit and accounting is worth mentioning at $18,000 because if you'll remember, we switched to one accounting firm and we weren't completely overwhelmed. We were a little, we just thought we could be better served by another firm that we didn't choose during the request for proposal. And so we ended up switching to that as a decision of the township board. So instead of the 4 years, that took us out 5 years if you add in that change because they honored the request of lagging by a year. So that $18,000 is the last year in that requirement. So we'll be coming back to you and saying, do we want to go forward and ask for a new fee from the current accountant, which I believe is what Metro did, and ask them. The current auditor, sorry. Accountant, auditor, it's all numbers and dollar signs, right? So we'll be taking a look at that, or do we want to do the RFP process? But that'll be something coming up. And again, you'll see the detail down in there, for example, association dues, exactly who we pay them to. I have noted in all of the departments where you have mileage and travelage and lodging and meals that, 2021 was very different. On the heels of 2020, everybody had fully adjusted to virtual. So a lot of those costs are skewed because we did everything from, our office desk or our couch at home or whatever it was, and we didn't incur a lot of those expenses. Some places are going back to in-person, some aren't, some are offering both. There's an MTA seminar, a retreat that is coming up this fall that was in person. I thought it was only in person, registered for it in person. Turns out they're offering it both ways, and so I'm going to do it remotely. Just how you find, some may be more valuable in person for the networking part of it, which is very, very helpful. I was just talking to Steve today about an accountant that I had talked to from the Department of Treasury at a supervisors conference. So sometimes it is helpful to be in person, but there's also times when you can take advantage and maybe leverage your time and money a little bit more with the virtual. Moving into the supervisors department, it looks very similar to the clerk and the treasurer's salary, education, so forth. You will see that typically, and this is something that we will change in the future, used to have a capital line item there, and that was a little bit of a misnomer because it would be 1,000 or 3,000 or something like that, and that's not truly capital. Capital rises to 5,000 and over. So what we'll do is we'll switch those funds that we used to put into capital and put them into supplies that are specific for that department. So say, for example, Sue's going to buy something and it's manila folders that everyone for the office is going to use. Then we'll build that into the general township supplies. But if she's buying something that's very specific for her office or for an election or Tracy with the taxes, then we'll put that under the department. Let's see the different associations. Michigan Government Finance Officers Association, MTA, which you guys all know, Assessing Association, and Township Supervisors, and all of those, as I mentioned, are pretty similar. You'll see in Sue's, there's a Clerks Association, and Tracy, there's a Treasurers Association. We move to the elections, and I'll let Sue talk about the elections, kind of cover those over a brief overview, but obviously this is a gubernatorial election, and it's definitely cyclical with elections.
Right, and our election commission has met several times to discuss retaining and recruitment of inspectors. So we did go through an exercise and asked other jurisdictions what they charge or what they paid their inspectors. And so we have in this election wages, this is based on 3 elections, whether we have 2 or 3, but it's also based with our, a revised wage scale, which we'll bring to the board, that the board will be approving. I think I had included some of that in my notes.
I think there was 3 different pay rates. 20 was the top.
21 is the top.
21's the top.
And then it goes down to 18 and a quarter, 17 and a quarter, and 15 and a half, I think.
Okay.
Based on, we've changed the tiers. We've done, with our absentee counting board, since it's expanded so greatly, we have 2 chairs, one of each party. They would earn $21 an hour. We have leads that would oversee the inspectors that are doing the actual ballot prep. So the team leaders would make the next rate. The inspectors would make the 3rd rate. In the precincts, now that we have 5 of them, we have 2 chairs that are at $18.25. No, since I don't have it in front of me. But we've tiered that. We've done a specialized with the electronic poll book because of the changes down the pike on that. They're going to make a little bit more. They have to do more training, but they will make a little bit more and it'll be more specialized, and then the general inspector. So overall, it doesn't make a huge difference by what we would expect it to be per election, but because we have taken that bigger dial down a little bit deeper to look at that and make it so, if I can paraphrase Mindy, and you can fix it if I do it wrong, why would somebody want to leave a job at a fast food restaurant to come and work for an election and make less money? There has to be a reason why they would want to be even more compelled so than community service.
Like, it's hard to get people for board of review to interrupt their lives for 4 meetings or 5 meetings a
Right.
year. It's hard.
Right, and there is a lot of training that goes into it. We do reinforcement training, and so we want to make sure that the folks that are charged with those duties are actually going to feel confident and be able to show confidence to those that are on the other side of the counter. So that's that part of it. Supplies, we know that there will be more envelopes, more mail, more things that way. Secrecy sleeves, we're planning on 6,000 absentee ballots per election is just as a norm. We are looking at a contracted election assistant. We did that this in 2020, which saved us loads of time. Holly and I were working 7 days a week, 15, 16 hours a day, trying to stay ahead of things until we were able to bring our retired deputy clerk and several of our election chairs in to help us just with the sorting and making things like that taken care of. Software, which is the next one down. Right now, we're looking at $6,500 for the year for software programming. We know that down the pike, we're going to have the maintenance agreement kick in, and so those numbers are going to change down the pike, but this year, we're looking at that being pretty consistent. The payroll expenses covers that contract election assistant and any staff members that instead of taking a furlough day want to work for us. We have to pay payroll tax based on that. They are not payroll tax exempt. Printing and publishing, that is for the notices that we have to put in the paper, different publishing that we have to do of manuals and things for all of the folks that we're training. Capital outlay.
It didn't have any notes on it, so I just figured it was just like a budget holder.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it's unknown still. We're waiting
Oh,
for
no,
the
that one
acts
did.
and things. Yeah,
Larger items needed for new
We have to
precinct.
furnish a new precinct 5 with sneeze guards, secrecy sleeves, I mean, things like that. Some that we approved tonight, the ballot containers and the new handicap accessible voting terminal, those were approved tonight through the monies this year. But I don't know that it'll all be used we're still kind of waiting to hear what the state's going to direct us to. And then the larger, again, with the larger election equipment capital, that will be if we need to purchase another tabulator or anything like that that may come down the pike. Right now, we're setting okay, but you know, I watched the webinar that MTA put on. They say it was what boards need to know about elections. I don't know if any of you watched that or not. It was an amazing 1-hour webinar, but they couldn't stress enough that you budget more than you think you need, because it's harder to find it if you don't put it in there in the get-go. It's easier to not use it. I think, you know, most of this could be used, but it always has to come back to the board for approval first, in a nutshell.
So, okay, and that's fine if you want to get into the detail and ask any questions too, but I just don't, I want to make sure everyone knows, I realize this is the first time you've seen the budget, and we'll still have opportunities
I guess the
to.
only question I got is, the original budget for 21, the amendment budget, is that for 3, was that figured for 3 elections?
No,
What was
that
that
was
figured for?
one. Because
And this one was
2021 is
figured for
typically,
3.
2021 is typically a non-election year. We figured if there would be any, there would be one.
Okay. That's all I had on that.
Okay. With that, we'll go on to assessing. As Steve mentioned earlier, we have a contract with the county. You'll notice the legal expense and the appraisals are directly related to the MTT cases. The current cases that we have right now, Center Ice, Tamarack, and Hampton Inn. I was just telling Sue and Tracy this week that with Tamarack, we needed to get an appraisal going. You'll see a difference there between the 2021 activity through to date, which is just under $3,000, and you'll see the projected activity, which is bumped up over what the amended is. And the reason for that is we needed to get going on the appraisal for Tamarack. Tamarack has actually a pretty significant effect. Every time we get an MTT, we do an initial analysis of where we're at on our values and where they are suggesting that we should be or petitioning that we should be on those values. And if we have a strong basis for the value and there's no mitigating factors that would suggest their value, then we defend that taxing authority. And Tamarack, and specifically, it has almost an exponential effect because it's a timeshare. So, you know, one unit is not one tax property ID, it's several. It's broken down into eighth timeshares. So it kind of explodes very quickly, and that's what's the impact on the appraisal for that one. But we also took a look at the cost of the appraisal versus the cost of mitigating that claim, and it was pretty significant. So we went ahead and told the attorney to get moving on that. She handles all of the appraisals and works with the contractor on, you know, one, if it's, do we need a full appraisal? Do we need a partial? How can we look at it to defend what the township has? So those are the big MTT cases that we have right now. As I mentioned, the clerk's office and the treasurer's look fairly similar as far as the line items. And as I mentioned, we'll be moving that capital. You'll see that transition in the next year when we do the new chart of accounts. Board of Review, pretty standard. Treasurers, as I mentioned, similar. Township Hall, we do have a couple things with the Township Hall that are worth noting. So as you know, our receptionist retired the beginning of April 1st, I believe, was close to her retirement day, or what was her retirement day, which was kind of a little trickery on her part doing it on April 1st. But she's off enjoying retirement. We looked at replacing that receptionist. I brought to you a updated terminology for office manager, received applications for that. Really, we've had a lot less foot traffic after COVID, or through COVID, I guess where it's not after, right? And so I've talked with Sue and Tracy about some paths going forward with that receptionist to office manager, to actually, we are looking at what the needs are at the front desk, and possibly looking at adding in a communications component to that. So we'll continue to look at that, and you may see in the next month or so in front of you a different job description that we may take a look at and post, and see what type of applicants we get for that would kind of move us into more of communicating better with the community and the public in general. The bookkeeper, we are over what we originally budgeted in for that. As Steve mentioned, we have some specific reasons that is higher. ARPA funds, the Gatsby, help me with the numbers. The 84, which was significant work. And there was a third thing too, and Chart of accounts, thank you very much. And of course, they helped us get through a significant portion of the budget, which the audit, which the township came through well on. From that, I think you'll see a lot of the standard things through this. This is the first place that you'll see some of the projects that are lined out. You'll see at the bottom is the 25 and the 40. And those things are mentioned in they should be mentioned in the notes, are they not? No, I don't even see them there. But I will make sure that those are in there next time. But we were looking, excuse me, in the township at 25 was some of the North Conference Room gets used very, very nicely for conferences and classes, and I was looking for some more tables and chairs that are easier to break down and put up and can facilitate some of those workshops better. So we'll kind of wait on that to see, but I did put that placeholder in there. It's unbelievably eye-awakening at how much they charge for tables and chairs. Excuse me. So we'll see, though, with COVID and how that goes and how many people are reserving the room and so forth. But that's got a placeholder in there. The exterior of the building is the parking lot, redoing the parking lot as far as the surfacing, and we've got some roots coming up in the back, so we'll have to cut out a part of that and re-asphalt that. And as well, that island that we have had trouble getting, not only contractors or landscapers, but also getting the plans made for it too. I'm still waiting on those. So those are some of the items in the general township hall. And as I said, those last two are the first of the projects that you'll see. And then we move into employee benefits. We've moved, I think we did this a year or two ago, where employee benefits are recognized. They are put in a different department now and put together instead of each an individual department. They are combined into one. We may have to look at changing the terminology on that to fulfill with what the Treasury wants to see, as well as right now we have it combined here. Steve and I were talking today, and he'll get clarification if we have to then bill that out like to each department. So basically like supervisors or clerks or whatever would have to have a portion of their benefits in there. We've talked about this internally before and have not wanted to put specifically, because our departments are so small and they're one person, we don't necessarily want to say this is what it is for, Mary Smith to have dental and vision. But what we can do is take the total cost of the benefits divided by the total number of people covered, come up with an average amount, and then place that into each department where those people are placed. I have talked with somebody about Treasury with that, and they felt that was absolutely fine instead of specific instances. We did just get today that they had an 8.68 adjustment planned for medical insurance, is what they had heard from the insurance.
Blue Cross
from-
only.
Yes.
We're
Oh,
still waiting
yes.
on dental and optical.
Yeah, so, but that includes I put in 8.68 across the board for all three of them. Excuse me. And I also did factor in filling the other position too, so it's not like that would be added above and beyond, that's factored into there too. Excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat there. We move on to planning and zoning. As you know, we've changed this department in the past year, and that with the chart of accounts actually has us with planning and zoning in two different departments. We have it in the 410, and we also have it in the 70, let me find it.
703, I think.
Yeah, 702, on page 40. So, and that's just the ZA's position, and then add that to the Department 410, and that's how you'll end up seeing it in the General Appropriations Act. When it does it by department, I think we'll probably end up tying all that planning and zoning together. But anyway, what we've seen on this is we're not planning on doing an intern. We weren't successful, unfortunately, to have a fellow, but we will try again for that next year. I think we reached out to see what would have made that grant a little bit more successful, and they just basically said there were so many people who asked for a fellow. So apparently it was a very popular thing last year to get a fellow. Let's see, we have 3% in here as well. I do have an additional amount in the planner for 2% for the industry wage, and I will bring back it's industry and performance, I will say, because we've had a lot of very technical things in the past year to 2 years that have required a lot of analysis and careful navigation in conjunction with our legal counsel, and it's been done expertly by our planner. So I will bring back those industry numbers for you to support that. Let's see. Any other things of note in here? Stormwater, we're no longer collecting in there. That's why you see a 0 in there for that. And the rest are the typical costs that you will traditionally see: education, association, mileage, travel, lodging, meals, those types of things. Let's see, and I will go ahead and summarize 702 along with that. With that, I do have a 3% in there, and then I have noted that at mid-year, with successful certification for the CZA, that we would look at that 2% adjustment there. Again, number one, it would be based on certification, but also performance. We've been very fortunate, and that I have had numerous people reach out to me, which, as you know, is not always typical in a given day, to randomly have phone calls or emails regarding the success of somebody in their position. So that's terrific. Although we have lots of people who are being successful, but to be to the level of having someone reach out is terrific. Let's see, Board of Appeals, pretty straightforward. And same thing with the Planning Commission. Road projects, I've only put in the road projects for the brining. I did do double of the brining. I think we're at like 8,500 this year, or just under that. So we will see where we're at. We don't know of any other SADs that are coming about, and we're not even sure with some of them that they will end up coming to fruition. So we'll see about that. The streetlights, these are what we were just talking about, Matt. That small 750 in there is just if we have a request that we're able to go out and pay to put the pole up, which they charge us, and then the 20,000 pays for all of the electricity on all of those lights. You'll see we slanted it down just a little bit, and that's based on a lot of those becoming LED lights. So now we get into, we talked about some of the special projects that you saw in the general township budget. We get into some of the special projects that we have for planning and zoning. And Claire's here too if you have any specific questions, and I'm sure she'll be here at other times than when we're going through the budget. But we have it's placed under the Village Center study, so instead of doing an additional line item, we felt it was most compatible with that. And that is just the completion of the master plan update and the zoning ordinance revision. We will be getting funds through the EDC, through the RRC, correct? And that will be added to the $10,000, and that will complete the zoning ordinance portion where we have to have some consultants work on the language for that zoning ordinance. Trail study, that is not specifically earmarked for anything other than we're doing so much activity right now with the trails, with the 3-mile trail coming south, Safe Routes to Sewell going on, that I'm sure we'll be having some more consulting fees and/or requests. So just dedicating some funding for that the trail initiative. The Bayshore Plan, as you'll recall, this is very similar to what you see in for this year. It was planned for a match amount, that $30,000, and then the $33,000 for next year, which of course did not go utilized this year. But that $33,000 is a match. We were not successful on the USDA grant. However, another funding source that has a grant program that has some successful applicants that are very similar to our project has come to our attention. And so Claire and the grant writer are meeting regarding that, and that'll be going underway. But it's a very, very similar amount and very similar match requests too. So those are really the couple special projects with respect to Planning Commission. And of course, we'll try to balance all of these with, you know, having a regular work life, because we have some other special projects. Obviously, our planner is going to be on maternity leave some of next year, so we'll have to balance all of those. But we're definitely, you know, setting out to make the biggest impact that we can. So moving on to the Parks Commission. Additional, very, very similar. Parks Commission has been through this budget, 3% adjustment. The one thing to note in here is we mentioned the contract services, or the attorney engineer grant fees are a little wonky this year because we added that larger grant for Wade Trim to do the engineering on that Arbutus Lake study, Arbutus Lake grant rather, on that project. And we've only been billed for a small portion of that to date. They're continually working on that. As a matter of fact, tomorrow we have a meeting on that. So they're working on it as we speak, and those invoices will go up. But next year, they included in the $32,000. Right now, I serve as staff for the Parks Commission, and so we'll be looking to having Beckett and Rader. Actually, if you recall, we had an intern here, Jake Myers, thank you so much. And he works for Beckett and Rader now. He worked really well with the Parks Commission, and so we're looking at bringing him back through Beckett and Rader to work with the Parks Commission just on continual projects through. So we've budgeted in some funding for that. So I think it will really help out the Parks Commission. It'll also really help out with my schedule and so forth too. Holiday Woodlands Natural Area, I'm really not, I'm sure enough that we put the 10,000 in there, but I am not sure that will be in the next year, really maybe within the next couple years. It will depend on when we close with the property. As you know, we're waiting for some information from Eagle and approvals and then through the DNR. But once we get that property turned over, both those properties turned over, what Claire and I have talked about is going for a Rotary grant and a match of $10,000 to institute a planning process so that we have all members of the community with some input on how that area gets used. Of course, there's certain requirements, thank you very much, certain requirements that, things we can or can't do, but within those parameters, kind of getting its highest and best use for the community and public input with that. The TART trail that you see there is the winter maintenance. And that's within what they have seen in the past. There's that $25,000 for the grant we mentioned. And then, of course, for right now, there is that $600,000 placeholder in there for the grant. As we see how we do that and how we, code those invoices and where they hit, that may change. But we do know that we'll be spending that on that project. That'll go out for bid in roughly January, and looking at a spring and early summer construction. So that'll be a really great project. Buildings and grounds, pretty standard, pretty typical. The only really thing of difference that you'll see here is we have some capital plan there, and you can see in the bottom, bleachers, retaining wall, basketball hoops. That will well within cover it. And some of that, we have some of in the budget this year, and so that may offset some for next year. But in the chance that we don't get some this year, and that may happen because it's really difficult getting things right now with COVID. We've had that problem with HVAC service and parts, very difficult getting things right now. So with that, we will skip down to page.
Contract services associated with the buildings and grounds.
With the, hold on one second. No, that's fine. Let me go there. Contract services. Actually, those are pretty different, and I can go and pull those exact numbers and tell you.
No, I was just curious. I mean, trash is a separate line item, so I was wondering what other contract services.
So if we have like a tree company come in and do like a larger tree, that will be something. Yep, stump removal.
Stump removal.
Okay,
Those types
Snow
of things.
removal if Bob's on vacation. Or-
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, and actually, we may have, this will be an interesting department coming up in this next year. I've been talking with our employee there, and there's just some different things going on that may fluctuate that. He's at a different time of his life when he's thinking of, when he may or may not choose to retire, and have all sorts of different things going on in his life. So I don't think I'm speaking out of term. He mentioned that to me. So right now, it's put in there just as it is, but we can take a look at some things as that happens. Let's see, we go on down to page 44, insurance and bonds. This is just your typical Michigan PAR plan, Mr. Lyle. I think you can get us about 25% off on that, can't you? You can get us about 25% off on that?
This is based on employees, too. I don't know if we want to cut that.
Okay, maybe not, but, so contingencies, we don't typically hit those too awful hard because we try really hard to get everything in the budget, but we did put a couple thousand in there. We just get on to the last remaining special projects. You can see, Boardman River, we've had in there. We've had the LEA contract. A couple things you'll see that aren't in there again, which are the TART Trail Maintenance Agreement, and if you remember, that wasn't really the maintenance agreement. We used that line item. That was actually the $10,000 that we partnered and redid the Parsons area with the county and the city and the school and so forth, and TART. And then the 7,500, which is a one-time study that we were partnering with Garfield and the city on the source of E. coli at Mitchell Creek. So that study is taking longer because of COVID. It was delayed. It uses some MSU resources, and MSU pretty much closed everything down. So that's been, but it is underway. They're installing, and I speak with Sarah every couple weeks, and installing some monitor wells, getting permissions, and seeking property boundaries, and who owns what property, and that sort of thing, so forth. So all of the municipalities have paid in they've ponied up and have paid it, and so then the study is just undergoing as quickly as they can get it done and get some results. So that'll be interesting. On this last page, you can see, first, a couple things that I want to go over. The projected activity for 2021, you can see that why you would have to look back a few pages for the revenues, but remember they were at about 1.8 million. And the difference with that and what we project the appropriations to be would leave us with adding to fund balance this year of about $200,000. Now, the number always looks what it is right now. It can change, obviously, with something unexpected in the last quarter. It can also change with audit adjustments. So I always like to see that number, but I'm always cognizant of those things. You can see that our requested budget for next year is quite the opposite. It's flipped, where our expenditures are over our revenues by $516,000. So when you break that up, excuse me, you'll see at the very bottom of the page on the left, you see that broken up a little bit. 516 minus 300,000, that's the match that we knew that we would be pulling from fund balance, which is exactly what that does. When you draw down and you have that negative net value, that's pulling from fund balance. And then it leaves a remaining 216 to come from fund balance. Now initially, anytime, because it's just my habit, when I see anything like that, I go, but there's a couple facts with that. And one is all of those things that make up that 216, as I mentioned, those projects through there add up to, gosh, I think over $170,000, so really approaching that $200,000 mark. Those are all non-continuing things. They're one-time, expenditures that last for many years. The other thing is we have some items, as we mentioned, going through this that fluctuate, right? So there's that $30,000 where for revenue sharing that was dropped down from previous years. What I've seen in the past is that kind of picks up as we get closer, and probably all township officials get on the phone with their local representative and say, what? And truly, what truly happens is they adjust their projections based on the revenues, obviously, because it's a calculation. But so, we have some fluctuations there. As we mentioned, just like this year, we didn't have any elections. Next year, we may not have 3 elections, we may have 2 elections. So there's some play in some of those expenditures and in some of the revenues. And the other thing to look at is you can see on this chart that I've just clipped, you know what I'm saying, I clipped into the page, shows the balance as of the end of the fiscal year for the past, what we expect this year, and then we know for the past 5 years. In all of those years, we have added to the fund balance in every year. And as a matter of fact, Tracy had mentioned to me that, so it's probably the same for you, Sue, you think that's been the case in every year?
Every year we've added to fund balance.
Specifically in some of these, and it's important to know, in a lot of these years, we've had some hefty expenditures too. Gosh, we've had some larger road projects, we've had some where we've done the 10% sharing on those types of things. We've been able to end up covering those out of existing funds. So with that, it does not cause me, myself, very much heartburn because of those reasons. Let's see, we go into the 206, which this board has seen before because we did look at those.
Well, we already adopted it.
But we have to put it in the general appropriations. So this is the 206 and the 207. 206 is Metro, 207 is the police, and 210 is the ambulance. These are all exact numbers that you have seen before. And as a matter of fact, we move into, let me fast forward you just for half a second to page 57, which is the L4029 that we have to file every September. And that shows exactly the millages that we place for the tax invoices, how we spread that. So with the Headley rollback, we're at .7051. Last year, we were at .7109. And of course, we're limited on how much we can grow, and they do an adjustment and roll that back so that we don't collect more than, is it 5% or the cost of living, or however they do that. So they titrate it so that you can't collect more than that. So it puts us at .7051, and then all of the emergency services are at 3.8. And then, let's see, we also have built into this budget, I have asked planning and zoning specifically to take a look at the different fees associated with things and see how on par we are with what it takes to process something, as well as how we compare to our peers across Grand Traverse County. They mentioned that we are pretty much on par with all of the planning and zoning fees. As you see here, it says consistent with the underlying costs. But one area where they recommended a change and noticed a significant difference was the ZBA fees of 50. And so with this is a suggested fee schedule, and on page 56, you'll see that change in fee. So as Sue mentioned, when this budget comes back again to this board for further discussion, we'll bring the wages forth as part of the package. We'll also bring the fee schedule as part of the package. But before that package comes to you, I wanted to let you know that this was going to be part of that package. Let's see, and then the last point I'd like to mention is your very last page of the packet, which is good because that tickle in my throat is really there. As we did last year, this was done again this year, and this gives you kind of an idea of where we sit. The first set of columns has to do with just plain operating millage, and of course, most of these are rolled back just like ours. Garfield, I believe, is the only one that sets their own millage because they were a charter by vote of the voters. Vote of the voters, you know what I'm saying? By vote of the people. Thank you very much. And so they set theirs every year, and they've been at 2 mills for quite some time, I believe. And then the rest all appear to me to be Headley rollback numbers within the townships. And then you have the EMS, which could be through a variety of different public acts or millages and how they do them. But those are the values there for all of their EMS. And then the last set of numbers is those completely combined. And then in the bottom, what I've done for you is, because we tend to compare ourselves with just townships, those let's see, the lines that go all the way across, the first set are basically just your average of townships, and then the median, which puts half of the people at above that number and half below. So it kind of gives you maybe a little benchmark on comparing where we're at. And then the last set does that for all the municipalities, which includes the city of Traverse City, the village of Five Lake, and the village of Kingsley. Those tend to do business just a little bit different, and sometimes that affects their millages too. But those have been included just as a basis as well. So that, my friends, is a first look. The last thing on our agenda, and the first look at the budget. As I mentioned, the budget does not include ARPA right now. It also doesn't include, Sue and Tracy and I have been talking about some potential changes, or what would serve best for the potential pandemics. I don't know how you ever plan for a potential pandemic, when that would hit, what it would look like, anything like that. But basically, safely serving the public. So we've been talking about some of those issues. Those are not really addressed in this budget either, depending on what we think ends up best serving the public, but those can definitely, and probably those two conversations do go together as the ARPA with any adjustments for, interior infrastructure to best serve the public with some ability to delineate between the offices and where the public can access and so forth. And again, when this comes back to you, it will have some of those smaller accounts. And it will have the wages as well as the fees. So that is where we're at. Does anybody have any questions at this point? I will kind of take a look at what everyone's schedule is. Sure, Sue, what?
The other one I was trying to think of was CPI.
CPI, sure.
It's like tip of my tongue and I couldn't get it, so.
So there's a couple different avenues. Obviously, we do meet in November. We can take a look and see what everyone's schedule looks like prior to November.
I would like that if we could. I'd like to set a separate budget workshop meeting where we can go over the numbers a little bit better and also start talking about ARPA. I'd like us to be able to do both.
I think with ARPA, I don't want to combine too many things into one. That's very, very specific. I do think probably the basic initial discussion we should have is not what to do or not how much it is, but what the process would be.
Sure.
And I think that would be a really perfect timing to have that as part of that
Right.
that
Well,
meeting.
I think that the board all needs to understand what ARPA is. I think some of us have been more immersed in it than others, and it's nice that the 7 of us have a chance to be on the same page and understand what we're being charged with.
Right, and so I think if you haven't had a chance to, Networks Northwest is having, I've sat through a couple of different ARPA things through MTA and Treasury and pretty much Wade Trim, pretty much everybody is having one, and there's obviously some central themes. But I went to a Networks Northwest one, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it had a gentleman from government at MSU, and he used to be involved with I think it was the Treasury, and I can't remember now, I could get you his name, but he did a really nice job in an overview. They're going to be taping some of those and having them virtual, so you could either watch it live or catch the tape. And I think if you want to look on Networks Northwest and try to look that up, I want to say there was like 8 of them scheduled or something. So, and the one that I went to was one of the first ones, I think, so they're still going on. And I would really just look for even one that's, taped, so you can catch it on your own schedule.
I watched an MTA one just to figure it out, and the biggest thing that I found is nobody knows exactly what we're allowed to do with this.
Nobody knows anything.
Nobody knows anything. So I know we did the application and the submittal and the cost loss revenues analysis. Have we heard anything on our submittal at all?
So we heard that it's about 3 weeks, I don't know, I lose track of time. Sometimes I'm like, I got to get that email back, and I think it feels like 2 weeks ago and it was like yesterday. So I lose track of time sometimes. But I think it was about 2-3 weeks ago, they were saying that right now they're going through and analyzing all of the applications and they'll be in touch with you. I think, Tracy, you heard maybe a stat of how many were accepted out of the thousands that didn't have.
Yeah, I can't remember. It was in our treasurers.
It wasn't.
I've gotten some clients that have gotten their first.
Yeah, I've
money,
heard of
and,
some gotten.
Yeah, I think the MTA newsletter too.
I said one that had a letter from Treasury that had 12 issues with their submission.
Yeah.
And
Basically,
we had-
redo everything that they've done and resubmit.
We had one, there was a box where our address needed to be in it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't on the sheet, it was lower on the sheet. So I had to put the address in and resend it to them.
Yeah, very, very.
So, very particular, which is good,
Yeah.
I get that. But I gotta tell you, at first I was a little concerned because I got the message that after the email came out, they said they were going to start, going through them, and if they had an issue, they would contact you. And I get a phone call from a number that is not a state number at all. It says like, some consulting thing or whatever. And the lady says, so there's an issue with the application and we want to get that corrected, and if you could give me a call. So I call the number and there's no voicemail set up for this number. So I'm like, is this spam or something like that? So I emailed the Treasury and I'm like, okay, this lady called me at this number, has no voicemail, what's up? Well, she called me the very next day and she's like, I'm so sorry, I had no idea. And she said, we've sent it to you, all you need to do is put the address on it and resend it. And so they were very easy to work with, got back with us really quick, and it was no big deal. But from there, they have so many to go through. I mean, it's every county, every township, every city, village. So I don't know when to expect any word or any.
They're working through it, and they have that status report out on Treasury's website that they update pretty much constantly.
MTA, on their weekly news brief, they usually have a link that you can go to, too.
So you can download their spreadsheet and go through it.
Yeah.
But we're working with a lot of our clients, and very few have seen their money. I think I've seen two or three that have seen the first tranche that's come through. It's just taking a lot of time.
Do you remember the 3 grants, the 3 COVID CARES grants through the state that we were involved with? I remember listening to a webinar on one of them when I was driving, and the gentleman was from the Treasury, and, you like to, maybe the initial reaction is sometimes, oh yeah, will they ever get to it, or what. Hey, I tell you what, they really had a process down, and the work that they had in front of them to do, the sheer numbers, was staggering. They were pulling from every other state department and every other part of Treasury that they could, and really trying to kick out those grants. The timing of those grants did change as they went along. It's like you thought something would be a while, and then all of a sudden we had the money. And, some had, you guys saw I sent an email, because 2 of the grants had a closing certification you had to file, and the other one had nothing. It was, you were done. And I was like, well, I want to make sure we filed everything. So I called them. They're like, yeah, you're good. So, I mean, you just kind of take it with what communication they give us. Luckily, we've got our emails, and if they're not copied, I forward a copy so they know what's going on with it and to look for those funds and that sort of thing. Yeah.
And just let me know, like I said, and as far as your meetings, you might, like I just spent 2 hours this week, or last week, one day sitting with a client going through. They had a list of, here's what we want to do or we're thinking of doing with the money, and we kind of went through, but we talked about those buckets, the 4 buckets, so kind of went through the list and said, oh, that looks like it falls into, and we kind of, categorized which bucket it fell into. So, so I mean, if there's something you need help with or want, but yeah, I think it'll take longer. I was expecting we'd spend an hour, we spent 2, and we were like, okay, it's getting kind of late, let's call the meeting. So it's there's a lot of stipulations, trying to figure out which bucket it goes into, which is the better good. Forward looking, that's the big key, is forward looking on any projects that you're looking at doing and that type of thing. It doesn't.
They really stress a lot through MTA to take your time. Don't go straight to, here's what I want to spend it on. They say, take your time, make sure we've got everything, and take your, just don't get so antsy. I will say too, Daryl mentioned about the county's process, and one of the things at the Networks Northwest, I was searching through some stuff while a couple people were asking questions, and I'll try to find it again, and I will send you the link if I can, but there's a website, I can't remember who put it out there. Was it like a Networks Northwest, or was it a municipality that had it? But it was actually kind of a compilation of different ways to garner public input. So, and it had high-tech ways, low-tech ways, of doing that, because all municipalities are different, right? Like some of us have tremendous IT capabilities, and some, don't have a communications person to get that out to a bunch of email addresses. So there's all different ways to do that too. The one thing that we have to do is make sure that communication's good, because, a member of the public, and I'm not picking on anybody, I'm saying my husband, say for example, he hasn't sat through those things like we have sat through with ARPA. So when he hears there's funds, it might be, 20 different things under the sun, none of which we can do. So when we do go for public comment, we'll want to make sure that we really frame that so that we get constructive feedback and not, things that, we just can't even do.
So do we want to do a doodle, or do you want, I know we have a joint meeting on the 19th.
We can do a doodle, but are there any, first, before we do a doodle, are there any great weeks or dates that someone's like, that's my 30th wedding anniversary, which it's not mine, so I'm not saying so. It is actually my anniversary coming up.
Yeah,
It's the 28th.
Budget meeting during one of your.
Yeah, you're right, but that's okay. He's out of town, so it doesn't matter anyway. But if there's anyone gone on a vacation or have, something
I'm just
specific.
backtracking from the November meeting. If we're going to try to adopt the budget with a public hearing at the November meeting on November 8th, it would be ideal to have a budget meeting for us to look at things the 20th or 21st of October. It would be stretching it to go into that next week.
And that would be fine with me. If that doesn't work for everyone, we can go to the next month, but I'd rather not if we don't have to.
Agreed.
And I'm fine with the 20th or the 21st. I don't know if that works how that works for everyone else. I don't think that, and there's no township meetings that night that I know of.
Board of Directors meeting for power
So
plant.
Glenn's at the power plant the 20th and 21st?
It's not
We
gonna
don't
work.
need you, do
Not
we?
gonna work for me either.
Okay.
I'm traveling.
What works for you, Matt?
The last week of the month works best
The
for me. but
25th?
Yeah,
That week?
yeah.
Okay.
About
Well,
the 25th for you.
The week of the 25th, well, I got a Metro, got a dentist, but if it's gonna be at night,
But it'd be Monday, the 25th, if that works.
That works.
yeah,
Let's shoot for Monday, the 25th.
let's do that.
I'm sorry, Mindy, what does that look like for you?
I don't know, I can't find my calendar right now.
It's in the computer.
Matt, does that work for you?
I think so.
I just usually figure if you're here, then you're
Not
probably
always.
here.
My calendar.
Right, exactly.
Not always.
I can understand that.
Because I is retired. Sorry.
Do we want to start
Lucky.
at 5:30 or?
Why don't we say 5:45? That way the doors can, the office can refresh itself for a public or an open meeting of the budget meeting at 5:45.
I'm fine, whatever we end up doing, so.
What do we want for time? 5:45?
5:45?
Why don't you make it 5:46? We're gonna do-
Why don't we do 6 o'clock, just
What
for
about 6
easier.
o'clock? Will that work?
Let's do 6 o'clock.
Let's do 6 o'clock, the 25th.
Did you pull up your calendar?
Yeah, nothing works for me.
Nothing works for you?
There. We're there.
Come on, what day? What day does work for you, Mindy?
January 3rd,
Not till after March.
because you got traveling kids.
Is there any day that week? What about the week before, the week after? No?
Seriously, March.
Well, we
Monday,
won't,
Wednesday, and Fridays, my husband's at work, so my kids are home alone. Tuesdays and Thursdays, my husband takes my daughter to hockey practice in
Yeah.
Novi, so I have to bring my son, so.
yeah, I know how, yeah.
So-
It's tough, I know. Why don't we do this, as we're not making any decisions during that meeting, and I will double check, but we can see about Zooming
I
you
can
in.
Zoom.
Let's see about Zooming you in, and the rest of us will be here.
We'll laugh at you and point at you and all that.
All
I
right.
even asked questions for the last meeting, and I
Yeah, but we
actually
can
got-
shut that part off.
Well, I had to text Beth.
So we'll plan on that. Our intention is not to have any motions. Even if we did have a motion, which we won't, we just wouldn't vote on it. Not a big deal. So, okay, so with that, we are at our last. Steve, thank you for being here and for staying with us to ask any questions. And Claire has been here. Claire, you're good or, okay. All right. Thank you very, very much. We'll move to the last public comment, and if there's anybody who would, as we often do, we've tried the patience of the public, and we do have some, if they want to make a comment. Okay, seeing no public comment, if there's no objection, we stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody. And so, Matt, are you one of those retirees that says, I love retirement?
It's 6 Saturdays and 1 Sunday.
Or do you lose track of like if it's Tuesday or Wednesday? Do you? I've heard that.